first shot in a new war over the war in Iraq when he appeared to call soldiers critical of the Iraq mission, quote, phony soldiers. But now some of those soldiers are firing back.
More and more troops and veterans of Iraq believe George Bush's military policy has been a disaster. I am one of them. Rush Limbaugh called vets like me phony soldiers for telling the truth about Iraq. Rush, the shrapnel I took to my head was real. My traumatic brain injury was real. And my belief that we are on the wrong course in Iraq is real. Until you have the guts to call me a phony soldier to my face, stop telling lies about my service.
This is such a blatant use.
Well, Limbaugh responded to the ad yesterday talking about the veteran who appears in that ad.
You know, this is such a blatant use of a valiant combat veteran lying to him about what I said, then strapping those lies to his belt, sending him out via the media and a TV ad to walk into as many people as he can walk into.
Mark Seavey is with the American Legion and also served in Afghanistan. Brandon Friedman is vice chair of VoteVets and is the author of The War I Always Wanted. Mark, let me first ask you, was this an unfortunate choice of words by Rush Limbaugh, first to use the phrase phony soldiers, and then when talking about this soldier who suffered a brain injury, got a Purple Heart, essentially comparing him to a suicide bomber, with lies from liberals attached to him when he was actually wounded by a suicide bomber?
I certainly think the second part of that was unfortunate. The first part, using the phony soldiers, I've read the transcripts, I've looked at all the websites from Daily Cost to Media Matters to Ace of Spades to Rush's own website, and it seemed clear to me in reading it that he was referring to actual phony soldiers like Macbeth, and there's a whole host of other phony soldiers out there who are doing this. Obviously, I think the second part about the vest thing, I think that was an unfortunate phraseology. I think Rush thinks, I mean, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I think he thinks that this soldier is sincere in his belief that Rush was saying that, but I think he's been sold a bill of goods, frankly.
And Brandon, what's your response to that? I mean, Clear Channel, who syndicates Rush Limbaugh's show, got a letter from 41 Democratic senators asking them to repudiate Rush Limbaugh. The CEO of Clear Channel has responded and essentially said, given the history of Rush Limbaugh's comments supportive of the troops, he doesn't believe that he was trying to indict our combat troops. Your reaction?
Well, Rush Limbaugh doesn't really have a history of supporting the troops. What you see this week, now that we've shined a light on it, you've seen what Rush Limbaugh tries to do. He'll attack veterans and soldiers who don't agree with him. He called us phony soldiers last week, and then yesterday he comes out after being challenged by one of these soldiers, and he compares him to a suicide bomber. This is just reprehensible, and I hope we could all agree that this is completely inappropriate for somebody with Rush Limbaugh's past to say things like that.
Well, what are you hoping is done about this, Brandon?
Well, I hope people understand that this is the type of person Rush Limbaugh is. I hope that people can see this. People need to know that this is a guy that's all talk. This is a guy who's a hypocrite, he's a draft dodger, and he lies about supporting the troops. The policies that he supports have done nothing but weaken the U.S. military over the last several years.
Mark, do you want to respond?
And then when we come out and we don't agree with him, he attacks.
I would like to respond. I don't think that's an accurate portrayal of Rush at all. I don't certainly listen to him on a daily basis or much at all. But VoteVets going after Rush Limbaugh, I'm a Red Sox supporter. If they lose tonight, I'm not going to go after ESPN. It makes no sense to me whatsoever, this thing. We have a war going on, and VoteVets thinks that we're losing it or whatever. Stay focused on the mission. Focus on the troops who are coming back. I applaud all the soldiers who have served over there, but it appeared to me, anyway, that Rush was referring to phony veterans, like Macbeth, like the guy who had pre-traumatic stress disorder, who wrote for the New Republic, who had combat stress when he was in Kuwait. I mean,
Mark, let me ask you about what critics have said, though, that and Rush Limbaugh says that he was taken out of context, and what he says is that he was referring to people like Jesse Macbeth. But critics say, well, then why did Rush say phony soldiers, using the plural, instead of phony soldier, referring to Jesse Macbeth? And why is it that Jesse Macbeth was not mentioned in the original radio interview until like about 2 minutes after he started talking about phony soldiers. Do you have an explanation for that?
I don't. I can only go off what I read on Limbaugh's site and on other sites, and I have friends who told me Macbeth was actually mentioned before. There's a couple explanations that at least seem plausible to me, one of which is being that Operation Stolen Valor that the VA just recently ran netted a whole bunch of people who were faking their military careers. You had Jimmy Massey. VoteVets got taken in by a guy named Josh Lansdale. And
Brandon?
Josh Lansdale was doing VoteVets ads and claiming that he wasn't able to get things from the VA.
Let me allow Brandon one last word on
Yes,
this,
ma'am.
Brandon.
That's not what this is about. This is about Rush attacking soldiers who disagree with him. You know, when we challenged him on Iraq policy, which, you know, we support the mission too. We want to go after al-Qaeda. We want to go after the people that attacked us on 9/11. We're getting bogged down in Iraq. And when we say that, when we put that in a commercial, Rush comes after us and he calls us phony soldiers, and he's now compared one of our guys to a suicide bomber, a guy who himself was injured by a car bomber in Iraq. So, you know, it's completely inappropriate for Rush to say things like this.
Brandon and Mark, we thank both of you for your service, and thanks both of you for coming on to talk about this.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thanks for having us.